Welcome to another Pro Football Doc Sports Injury Central podcast. Super pleased today to have special guest and friend Evan Silva on the show. And everyone knows Evan from his fantasy stuff, Roto World, now his very successful Establish the Run. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. We've done this pretty much every year, I think, Dr. Chow, since you started your own thing, and I think they've been productive visits.
Well, I look forward to this, but I'm surprised. I've got Justin, the producer, and Jacob, our content guy, and Taylor, our analyst, and I think they're more excited than me. Every time I mention something or talk about something, Taylor will say, what does Evan say? What does Established Run? Can we get that?
Bring Evan on. I keep saying it.
So he can't. Normally, this is just a you and I part of the conversation here, but I promise you, Taylor cannot help himself. He will have to jump in. He's over the moon excited.
Hey, we need more people. We need more people like Taylor. We need more of them.
Oh, they're
keep telling them that
they're out there.
They are. I know.
This is. Usually we prepare a little bit for the podcast, but, whatever. There's no preparation necessary when it comes to chatting with you. We know what work we're doing. I might ask you some questions. You can go whichever way. And quite honestly, prior to your going to Establish the Run and my doing Six Score and Pro Football Doc formally, we had some good chats, the three of us, you, me, and Warren Sharp, right? And some of those podcasts would go 3 hours. I wouldn't be on for 3 hours.
Jeez,
but
Louise.
You guys really ran through it all, and good times. But feel free to jump in. I am not the best program moderator. We'll just have a conversation here. I think the first one maybe that we talk about, just because he's a quarterback, and he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, is Matt Stafford and his elbow.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, some of my guys said the opening game, Bills versus Rams, the line has been pulled down by some houses.
It has been, yep.
What is your take on that so far? And we have our injury take on it, but what's your thoughts?
Well, my take right now is we have a first tier of players at the top of the first round: Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jonathan Taylor, and Christian McCaffrey. And I've had Cooper Kupp as the number 2 player in that first tier. And I'm thinking about moving him to the number 4 player in that first tier, and moving Justin Jefferson ahead of him as the number 1 overall fantasy receiver, which is kind of a big move after the season that Cooper Kupp had. So, I need to throw this back to you because, every time that Sean McVay talks about it, he talks very glowingly about most situations, but he hasn't talked overly glowy, about this situation. He has not been super excited about this situation, and that bothers me because I think he called the level of pain that Stafford is experiencing right now abnormal or unusual. Something along those lines. I don't know. I want to hear you talk about this.
So with the panel of sports injury central doctors, including baseball doctors, we leaned on that and came together to form this opinion. It's some sort of potential tendonitis that required a PRP injection. The number one worry is this an ulnar collateral ligament Tommy John issue, like you hear about for pitchers? And that would be disastrous. We do not believe so. Our preseason Six Score for Matthew Stafford for the season was 92. He's older. He's not a young guy at 95.6. We're never higher than 99. And we're not changing it based on the current information. Here's why. We don't believe it's ulnar collateral. The most common form of elbow injury in a baseball pitcher is a flexor tendonitis on the medial side of the elbow, different than ulnar collateral. And if it really were ulnar collateral, a big worry, he wouldn't be throwing at all. He's throwing individual and 7-on-7s. So what that tells us is, yes, tendonitis is lingering. They want to be careful. It has to do with grip. Look, we wouldn't be surprised if ultimately he was seen throwing a college football slightly smaller, right? And that helps with the grip on the medial side of the forearm. So he can make all throws, but it can hurt to have tight window, high effort throws. Thus the individual and 7-on-7. he could do 11 on 11. They're just not trying to add mileage to the elbow and soreness. And we all know Matthew Stafford, along with my guy Phillip Rivers, have been the best at playing through injuries, broken backs and thumbs and this, that, the other. I don't think Stafford's going to be worried about letting it rip in a game. They just don't want to let it rip here again and again in training camp. So I like this kind of stuff because, I don't know, I hate being the bearer of bad news all the time. And that's what I feel like I am all the time. Look, I used to always say to my GM when he'd look at me and shake his head and you're killing me and all this stuff. And I literally would say to him, Evan, look, I'm Paul Revere. I'm not the British. I'm just telling you the injury's here. I didn't cause the injury, okay? Kind of thing. But I like giving good news. I think Stafford is going to be okay. Is he going to have rest? Are you going to be worried because it's his throwing elbow? I think so. Would I begrudge you to move Justin Jefferson ahead of him? No. A, you know that better than me. B, if you don't practice 11 on 11 with Cooper Kupp, even though they're both veterans, they know what to do, maybe that's the tiny delta that makes that change. And that's big for you guys in the fantasy world. But I don't expect it to be disaster. And if you move Cooper Kupp from, to the next slot at wide receiver from the top tier, I'd say, okay, that's fine and reasonable. If you moved him to a middle tier, I'd say, no. Matt Stafford's going to be okay, right?
Okay, I like
kind
that.
of thing. So I think your thoughts are defensible, even though we have not changed our 6 score for the season off of it.
Okay.
For fantasy drafters.
Makes perfect sense.
The other big one that has come out today, Monday recording of this podcast, is hip hip hooray. J.K. Dobbins has passed his physical and is back fully at practice. And one of the things I love, Evan, is crowdsourcing. Look, we do a lot off of video, and in the preseason, there's not a lot of video. A lot of beat reporters are restricted from posting video, so we rely on fan video. We do have a little video of J.K. Dobbins. I said, look, right now, our preseason injury 6 score on J.K. Dobbins was a fairly low 47 because it was an ACL and LCL injury. As a matter of fact, our article at 6score.com got linked and quoted by Ravens.com that it was an ACL and LCL. He started on PUP. He is now off. But off PUP does not mean he's 100%, as you know. Let's take another example, Evan. Chris Godwin. What do you think of Chris Godwin?
Well, yeah, so he's not going to start the season on reserve PUP because he's off the active PUP.
Right.
So I moved him up. I started out pretty conservative on him. I mean, he had a very late season. There were a bunch of guys this year that had very late season multi-knee ligament tears. And so I had him in the 80s overall, and I moved him up into the 50s. So now that we know that he's at least going to be eligible to play within the first month of the season, we don't expect him to be ready for week 1. Just based on all the information that we've gotten, or probably even week 2, but maybe he could start ramping up in week 3 or week 4, and then maybe be full go by the middle of October. I mean, that's kind of like the bull case for him. That's the most positive outlook, and Chris Godwin's awesome. We want to be on the positive end of awesome players, and it seems like his recovery's been going well. But I want to hear what you had to say.
Yeah, and I don't mean sidetrack from Dobbins. We'll get back to it, but I think the Chris Godwin case will make the point. Chris Godwin, our preseason 6 score for draft purposes. Now, you rank him by draft order, so going from 80 to 50 is a big jump up.
Yeah.
We're the opposite. We rank out of 100 in terms of percent of health, right?
Okay, yeah,
and
sure.
very few people are 100. So think of it this way, and guys, help me out with the stats. Last year, for example, Saquon Barkley, we had at a 46, I believe. 46 out of 100. His ESPN, I guess we should be quoting Establish the Run fantasy stats, projections, but his ESPN fantasy projections was 1,171 yards and 9 touchdowns. We said his 6 score was 46. Yes, that's because coming off the ACL. Yes, he hurt his ankle as well. But he finished with 600 some yards.
580.
Sorry, 580. See, I'm not trying to cheat the system. 580, less than 50% of the yardage, and 2 touchdowns instead of 9 in terms of projections. I'd say our 46 wasn't too bad. Now, of course, the ankle injury, you could say.
What's funny though, and a little anecdotal here is that I remember last year, I'm in a lot of drafts with Mike Clay of ESPN, and I noticed that he was drafting a lot of Saquon Barkley. Probably because they had him so high in the rankings. Maybe he should have looked at your 6 score. No,
that's his prediction. That was his projection. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yep.
No disrespect to Mike Clay. He's absolutely one of the best, and he's also a really good fantasy football player, not just a great fantasy football analyst. But in this particular instance, I remember that standing out. Like, God, Mike keeps taking Saquon Barkley in like every draft that we're doing.
Yeah, well, I remember, and I only do the Scott Fish Bowl, right, primarily. And I remember we were about middling, and I was like, please don't let me take Saquon. Please don't have Saquon fall where I have to take him because I don't want to take him, and thankfully we avoided that. But that's just an example of how our 6 scores work. So for Chris Godwin, we have him right now for this season, and it will change week to week as we go, as 62. So if you're normally a 1,000-yard guy, he's a 600-yard guy. I mean, just as a reference. And now, why do I bring him up and interrupt J.K. Dobbins? He passed his physical day 1 and was never on PUP. That doesn't mean he's 100% healthy. That means contractually they signed to a big deal. There's no reason not to. They'd rather have him do individual drills with the team. He has to pass a physical to do that. Otherwise, he's working on the side with the trainers. They're not going to not pay this guy. They've already rewarded him. They know he's coming along, and that's all good news. But that doesn't mean he's your wide receiver 1 week 1. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And right now, the latest video we've seen on Chris Godwin, and most of us has probably seen it, he's got a big old ACL brace on his knee. He was injured week 15. Evan, do you ever remember a wide receiver or a skill position player that wears a brace like that? I mean, in real games?
I guess maybe some RBs, but certainly not wide receivers. I mean, a
DB would be licking his chops if he saw that. And I saw that on video, and there were some comments, and look at how he's doing, look at his route running. Yeah, he's running against the DB coach. I mean, I would hope he could burn the DB coach. I mean, that's so. Look, I'm not hating on Chris Godwin. I'm with you. I think second half of the season he can do better. See Odell Beckham, and Odell Beckham last year's ACL was earlier than Chris Godwin's. But to say week 1 he's 9 catches, 100 yards, it's just not realistic.
Right.
In terms of what's happening.
Look, if he was 100%, or if he had a 6 score in maybe the 90s, I mean, he'd be like a second round pick. I mean, he'd be a top 25 overall player. So I mean, we're definitely adjusting for some missed time or time early in the season where he's not going to be as effective. That's really the the thing that I feel like is hardest to gauge is the effectiveness of the players when they return. What is that? Are they going to be eased in? J.K. Dobbins, is he going to be eased into the season?
Yeah, we'll get back to J.K. Dobbins, but now I just realized one thing, Evan, why we don't use your projections when we talk about 6 scores. Because your projections already have some health issues factored in. A lot of the others don't. That's why we use the ESPN Saquon one. They don't fully have them. You do. So that's why projecting 62 against yours is not accurate because you're already factoring some of that stuff in. We're saying 62 from what a healthy Godwin would be. That's kind of what we're saying. So back to J.K. Dobbins. Great. He passed his physical. He's off PUP. But it's still a multi-ligament knee injury. And okay, he has a brace on, and some running backs do. So, and I just use a Chris Godwin example. He passed his physical. Doesn't mean he's 100%. Justin can pull up in the video here and screen share it. And this was from today, one of the Baltimore beat reporters. You can see J.K. Dobbins. In one of the games I always play, Evan, is as you look at the video, I go, was it his right knee or left knee? And look, My guys in the room here immediately say, "Oh, left knee." Okay.
Should we let Evan play?
No, I mean, look, as he does this drill, first of all, he cheats when he starts off with the left side. It's a little distance here. And then look at the change of direction at the end. We'll show it again. So let's go through it again. He cheats to start. He stumbles on one of the tires, and then to change directions at the end and come back, he's completely favoring the left side. And look at how long he even limps halfway through the jog. And look at it takes him 20 steps to stop.
Yep.
He's not there. I mean, is he an NFL running back? Yes. Is he going to get there? Yes, and I hope so. Is he anywhere near 100% today? No. Now, we're going to hold off because our season 6 score for him is 47, meaning a little less than half of what you expect. We may indeed raise that as we see him look better. We're not stuck on it. But right now, I don't see anything to make us, boom, change our mind. And, of course, when week 1 comes around, we will have week 1 injury expectation and 6 score grades. These are just amalgamation of the season for fantasy draft purposes. Expect about half of what you might expect a healthy J.K. Dobbins to have. We may raise that a little bit as we see better video, but off of that video today, and you can say he's not warmed up and it was early in practice and it wasn't max effort, but even as he does the drills, his right knee lifts a lot higher than the left. I mean, he's not even. And look, this is the NFL. The game is not that easy. You really have to be at your best to be successful, even for a great running back like J.K. Dobbins. So it all depends on what round, right? I mean, you're talking in the first couple rounds. I don't think you can take J.K. Dobbins.
No. Well, the good news was
at some point in time you can.
Up until this point, he had been like a 7th or 8th round pick. So smack dab in the middle of the draft. But now he's going to rise, I guarantee you,
right?
Because people see him out there and people don't know what they're looking at. So,
well, I'm a fantasy novice, as you know, and in the middle, I'd have to see what else I had and the scoring and the whatever. By the time you get to double digits in the draft, I think he's worth a flyer, especially later season. But if he's rising to the first 5 rounds, I think you pass. I think you got to look other directions. Look, but you're the fantasy expert, not me. So
no, I tend to agree with you. Can I throw one back at you? And that's
sure.
Saquon Barkley again this year. Do you know what your 6 score on him is for this season?
Yeah, the guys will look it up. It's in the 90s.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yes. I think there's some bounce back coming on for Saquon.
All right.
Think back to
because he hasn't been good since 2019. I mean, he
it's
really
93, Evan. 93.
Yeah. I mean, he's good. Yeah. Go ahead.
Now, remember what 93 means for us is that he's 93% of a completely healthy kid with no injuries coming out of college. Okay? So 90s are all pretty good. He's not 96 or 97, 98, but 93 is okay. And it's based on his health. If you, Evan, say based on scheme, based on his production, based on the offensive line, based on the fact that you don't think he's that good of a player, you're 93% of a lower projection number. We're just talking about health, okay? That's all we do, and we stay in our lane with that. So we're just saying we expect a health bounce back year for Saquon. He was 46 last year. He's double that this year. The second year back after the ACL is the good year. I remember when I first started in fantasy, everyone, they had hated on, we said Dalvin Cook after his ACL wasn't going to have a good second year back. He didn't. And then the next year, I was drafting him at a bargain because people said, I'm done with that guy. He's not any good. And yes, he got some shoulder issues later in the season, but his knee was pretty good that second year back. I expect this physically to be a bounce back year for the Giants. But as we do our field views and team 6 scores, I mean, as you know, we haven't broken down to the offensive line. We have a run offense versus run defense. The Giants have some injury issues, right? An O-line, some that carry over from last year. So that may factor into what you think Saquon's going to do. But just Saquon himself, we have him in the 90s.
Yeah, actually, their O-line has gotten better. I mean, they've got 2 top 7 picks at tackle now. And they've got some guys who just have shown the ability to block people on the interior, which is not something that they've had for the Giants in years, sadly enough. But All right, so here's my thought on Saquon, and this has been my concern. It's just that he's not very good anymore, because coming out of Penn State, he had this ability to put his get vertical, because he would get stacked up around the line of scrimmage constantly. I mean, he was an extreme boom bust runner, where he stuff for 0, gain of 2, gain of 1, loss of 4, and then all of a sudden he'll break an 80-yard touchdown. Because he could put his foot in the ground and accelerate vertically upfield and bang long runs like nobody else could, So you could forgive him for all those crappy stuffed runs because the dude, had this in his toolbox. But I think for the last couple of years, he has lacked that ability to put his foot in the ground and get explosive vertically. Can he get that back?
Well, from an ACL perspective and otherwise, I mean, we're relatively optimistic. Of course, we weren't there at surgery. We don't know associated cartilage damage. But, and as you know, running backs like that age quickly in the NFL, right? And, I mean, if you go back to this last playoffs on another great running back, Derrick Henry, when he came back at Sports Injury Central, we were big. I don't remember the 6 score off the top of my head. The guys can look it up. We said, look, he's back. He's going to play against the Bengals, but this will not be King Henry. This is at best Derrick Henry. And with his right fifth metatarsal coming off surgery, if you look at his stats, he did pretty well running to his left, outside left foot, cutting up field. But to his right, he did not score on that 2-point play. There was one play in particular I remember, out on the edge, everyone blocked but the cornerback. Don't you dream of that if you're a Tennessee Titan? Derrick Henry against the cornerback on the edge. Tackled for no gain because the bad outside foot couldn't plan and cut out field. So what you bring up is very important, the ability to cut up field. Now, by the way, this year we think Derrick Henry's no issue. High, low chance of recurrence. We're very happy
94-6 score for Henry.
94-6 score entering the season. But I remember the stats were he got about 60 yards in that playoff.
20 for 62 and a touch. Yeah.
20 for 62 and a touchdown. And 4 runs to the right for about 2 yards, and 16 runs to the left for 58 yards. I mean, that was his numbers on the day. I mean, not a bad day, but if you just look at what he could do there, that's what he could do. And that's kind of what we try and do. It's not a matter of do they play or not play. It's if they're questionable in playing, what percent and what, week to week. And the other thing I would have your listeners and fans look at is absolutely follow along with what your rating is. But if you're undecided, whether on DFS or fantasy, on who to play, it would behoove you to look at the field view and look at the run defense 6 score of the opponent that day. Is the run defense of the team that one running back is playing banged up, or are they both healthy? That might be the differential, especially if the Evans Silva rating's very similar. How do you decide between the two, right? Or looking at the offensive line health on field view. So what we're big advocates of, we're a tool. We're a tool for smart guys to utilize. And you're among the smartest. So we love the fact that you utilize them. And we're not trying to influence a single decision that you or any fantasy player or DFS guy makes. We're just giving you another factor to consider and figure out what you want to do. And you do so much homework, and we just do a lot of injury homework on all these guys. And I think we're really the only place that looks forward on injuries. Everyone else is based off of coaches reporting and looking backwards and looking at patterns. We're looking forward, and we love the fact that coaches do their job and coach speak abounds, right? I mean, we love that. I mean, Jimmy G is going to be fine after surgery. No, he's not tradable until he can throw and pass a physical, because it's a throwing shoulder injury and he hasn't been traded. Look, John Harbaugh at the Ravens, the last 4 weeks of the season, Lamar Jackson looks good this week. We think he's going to practice and play. This was on Monday. And the line would be Ravens -6 or 6.5, and we'd say no, he's not playing this week. And Friday gets ruled out; it moves to 2.5. Right? I mean, so we love, and we don't dislike John Harbaugh. He's doing his job, right? It's coach speak. It's your job and my job, at least my job, for injuries to interpret based on videos, and that's what we try and do.
Love it. Another guy coming back, and I know you've tweeted about him quite a bit, is but I still want to hear your take. Michael
I
Thomas.
knew that's where it's going. Hey,
Okay.
Hey, I'm laughing at that because people really retweeted and said, "Oh, he's coming after you, Doc," because he said something about fantasy doctors not knowing anything.
Oh,
or
that's
whatever.
right.
It kind of was, right? A little
Well,
bit.
I look at it this way. My number one, I've always been very upfront that I don't know fantasy, right? It's my third official fantasy contest this year. Scott Fish Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've had some beginner's luck. I've been very Marty Schottenheimer, done very well in the regular season, and in the postseason,
we don't show up. Yeah.
that the only victories that we've had is the 2 first-round buys, right?
Yep.
In the second round, we get demolished. We're not in position to win in the playoffs, but whatever. We're happy just not to be in last place because I'm a beginner at all this. But in any case, what we're saying is, so I said to Michael Thomas' response, first of all, I'm not a fantasy doctor. I don't know anything about fantasy, really. And technically, I'm a, quote, real doctor, right? So maybe he wasn't talking about me. I'm just joking around. But here's the thing. We wrote in April, correct, guys? Mm-hmm. Here's what we wrote in April. And I'm more than happy to modify and change this. What we wrote in April, and this is before he didn't pass a physical for minicamp, before anyone knew of all this, before he didn't pass the season opening physical and all this. Right. We said, we're worried because A, he had a third surgery, B, the videos that we were seeing that he was still limping quite a bit on that one side. And so we gave him a relatively low 6 score of 59 at the time. And we said, we still have some worries about him because we don't like it. Remember, this is a 2019 was his last full season. This was a 2020 injury that obliterated 2021 and now is beginning to leak into 2022, at least minicamp when he didn't pass. So at that point in April, the article that we wrote was when Michael Thomas got hurt, before he got hurt, he was a top 3 receiver in the NFL. We think it's less likely that he returns to be a top 3 receiver this year than it is that he's number 3 on his own team with Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave. And I get that's a very bold statement. The bottom line is if he's the number 2 receiver on his team, I think we're still proven correct that he's a lot closer to the number 3 receiver on his team than number 3 in the NFL, which is where he was in 2019 before the injury happened. So is he looking better? I think he is looking somewhat better. Would we increase his season 59 6 score? Not yet. Would we increase his week to week? We'll see. I mean, I saw some video this weekend, I think, of look at how good he looks.
It's like 3 days ago, I believe.
3 days ago. Yeah. Yes, cutting off his good leg, his good ankle. Yeah, one plant cut. What about the rest of the route tree? And there was something, look at his move, and he's getting separation. Once again, separation against what looks like it to be a DB coach or an intern. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would hope he can get separation from those guys. So I'm not hating on Michael Thomas. I want him to get healthy. But just being honest, he's still at 59 for the season overall. Now, we might raise that as we get closer and see more video. We're not stuck on the opinion, and we're not to me, our opinion's actually been pretty good because we wrote the 59 in the opinion in April. And, now he's trending better, and we'll see where he's at. But that's kind of where we're at.
And on that one, I know you love Olave, Evan. You've been talking about him on Twitter.
Yeah.
So even in camp, it looks like he's already agreed with what we've been talking about in April. But also, we had Winston at an 81 Doc 6 score to start. How do you feel that's going to affect Thomas at all?
Well, look, first of all, the work they get together has been diminished this whole offseason. And Olave, arguably, he's gotten more work with Jameis Winston than Michael Thomas has, even though Olave is a rookie, right? So that factors in the equation. And obviously, Jarvis Landry is in the mix now. As far as Jameis Winston concerned, the reason why we give him an 81 is from the pocket, we think his knee health is pretty good. Mobile and creating plays outside the pocket, we have our doubts. So that 81 is kind of an amalgamation of Jameis and his production for the year. Look, he had a multi-ligament knee injury. Right. We think and we strongly believe he will play week 1 and be effective, but perhaps not as effective because he can't extend plays. But we don't think he's going on PUP or not ready for the start of the season because he's a quarterback. If you're a running back or a wide receiver, that's a different story. It's a different level. From the pocket, I think he's going to be very effective, at least not hindered that much by his knee from the pocket.
Good.
But out of the pocket, we have our concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's always been, he's a slow runner, but he's always been a good scrambler. Mm-hmm. And he's been just mobile enough to make a difference on the move and he's always been pretty good at running around the goal line. But I
big
think
kid. He's a big kid.
Yeah, yeah. He's a big dude. Let me ask you about Zeke Elliott, because he's a guy who people don't want to draft this year at all. I just got him in the 6th round in a draft.
I've got him around there too, Evan. He's fallen in a lot of places for sure.
Yeah, it's wild. I started drafting him like every time because, he still has like 12 to 15 touchdown potential, but is he going to come back and be the same after this PCL injury? Is he? He's not that old still. He's like 26, 27.
I believe health-wise, he will come back very strong. And, in my one draft, I was waiting for him to drop enough that I would take him and have a bargain, but I didn't get there.
He's a 93 6 score.
But he's not 6'4", 93.
Nice.
He's going to recover from this PCL. The bigger threat to Ezekiel Elliott, of course, is scheme and Tony Pollard, right? And you can comment more on that. But physically, I think you're getting a good deal in the 6th round, even though I'm not a fantasy guy. I've got, health-wise, if that's what you're asking, I've got reasonable confidence that Ezekiel Elliott will be fine from that PCL with very little residual. Now, usage and what they do is, who knows, right? But physically, I think he's fine and draftable.
I like it. I'm just gonna start. I'm just gonna take him. I'm gonna take a stance on him.
It's more comfortable this way. Anyways, this was the old days. Yeah. You would just ask me questions and I answer. You could have the floor.
All right. Yeah.
Run him down.
let me hit you with another. Michael Gallup. And I think he did not have a multi-knee ligament, right?
Well,
I don't know. Just go ahead.
Technically, he did. Okay.
Oh, he did. Okay.
It was ACL, MCL, but MCLs don't need surgery.
57 6 score for Gallup, guys.
Yeah, 57, and that was interesting. There was our good friend Michael Gelkin, who was in San Diego. He was covering the Chargers when I was working the
Tribune,
Chargers.
Yep.
The Union Tribune. Yeah, so he's a good friend. They were reporting, look at how great he is. He's moving. I was like, no, he's not there yet. And we wrote again that this is an ACL MCL. And I think it might have been as a result of our articles that he was asked about that post-practice and interview, and he admitted to the MCL in addition to the ACL. And he admitted that even though he's looking good and rehab's on schedule, that he wasn't maybe ready for the start of the season.
It's January 2nd is when this happened.
Yeah, and he's in the Chris Godwin camp. No matter how you package it in terms of...
But he's even later than Chris Godwin, right? Yeah. He's a couple weeks later.
Yeah, he is. He's 2 weeks later. But, depending on associated injury, this, that, the other, the MCL does heal without surgery. I can't say, look... Chris Godwin will come back 2 weeks before Michael Gallup. That's cutting it too close. I'd put them in the same, as you put it in fantasy, tier of injury in terms of time period. And I'd say they're similar. And if you look at their 6 scores, look, because of the multi-ligament 57, Chris Godwin 62. That's pretty close, for the season in terms of what we're expecting out of them. Now, of course, for the Gallup situation, what he's missing out on is, all the extra reps is the number 2, right? With Amari gone. And Godwin's spot is going to stay intact, right? Because they know it's Chris Godwin and he's coming back. It's always harder, in my mind, to recover from an injury and jump a level of play. You get what I'm saying?
Jameson Williams, right?
Yeah, Chris Godwin's just trying to return to a same level. Michael Gallup this year, absent injury, is trying to get to a new level, right? And so it's always harder to do that. And same with Jameis Winston. When he was drafted, we didn't say... Jameson Williams. We didn't say that Detroit made a bad choice. We just said you can't expect him to start of the season.
And he's a 53.
And 53, but they've now said it. He's going to start on PUP. So here's a rookie, a great college player who's got to jump a level, can't be in all the practices and other things, and he's got to worry about his rehab. That's harder to do. So that's kind of where we're at on that.
He was so fun to watch in college. I mean, Jamison Williams, just a straight
and by the way, Evan, I know you get into some of this too, but we actually did that live time in the national championship game, saying it was an ACL because the video was pretty good. And we're about to launch in the next week. We're going to cover college football this year. Now, will we be covering, no offense, Austin P? No. I mean, okay. I mean, we just bandwidth issue. But SEC, Big Ten, and we'll have a college football tab at Sports Injury Central.
All the big prospects.
All of it, yeah. SICScore.com. We have some articles up already. And part of what makes us do that is not only the popularity of college football, but the way, drafts are working now where, you're even drafting college kids before they get to the NFL.
You were doing it already, right? I feel like, you already had
a little
your
bit,
finger in the palm.
But also with NIL, I feel like it's not the pure sanctity of sport for sport. They are playing for pay, so then it starts to be fair to analyze what their injuries are. If it's just a pure college student, I didn't love that idea, right? But now it's pro, semi-pro. I think it's fair to go. So we are going to cover college football this year.
Nice. I like it. I'm running out of guys here.
You want to bring up his Bears, maybe?
Oh, your Bears.
Whoa, hang on.
Sorry,
hang on.
Evan. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, I am not a freaking Bears fan, okay? Let's just be clear about this. Oh, hell no. Hell no.
Okay.
I don't root for any specific NFL teams. I only root for my fantasy team, okay?
Oh, okay.
Just want to be real clear about that.
All right.
Well, the Bears wide receivers have some issues now with N'Keal Harry and some of the other guys.
Rookie,
Byron Pringle,
Billis Jones.
O-line. Yep. But I'll give you a little sneak peek.
They're going to be horrible, and it's going to be glorious.
All right.
He disavowed knowledge pretty quickly there. So, we'll talk about three things real quickly here. Number one, the Ravens, and we haven't fully published it all. We've just leaked some of it, and we're going to get into it with field views. Okay, you're supposed to start your season with a team overall six score into the 90s. Because you don't want injuries to leak from one year to the next. And if they do, the GM is supposed to sign somebody, right, to fill it. Now, once training camp starts, injuries start to happen, and maybe your 95, 94 becomes 88, and, as you go down in what we do. The Ravens right now are sub 80. 25 of the 32 teams are 90 or above. They're the only one sub 80 right now. Why? We talked about Dobbins. Gus Edwards off the ACL. Ronnie Stanley, maybe not there. Tyler Linderman, just recurrence of the list Frank. Media saying 1 to 2 weeks. We don't really buy that. So 2 out of the 5 offensive linemen. Both, quote, top running backs. Obviously, they're wide receiver.
Marcus Peters as well.
Issues. On defense, they're outside linebacker, weak outside linebacker issues. Both. The one drafted, the one before with Achilles issues. Marcus Peters.
Bowser Nagabo, yep.
Yeah. So the bottom line is they've got red dots all over the field right now, and that's not good coming into the season. And they came out of last season one of the most injured teams around. They're coming into the season.
They have 5 people on PUP. 5 people on PUP, and that's what Dobbins already coming off. So
Football Outsiders had them last year. They do an adjusted game loss metric.
Right.
You know,
I like what they do there.
And they had the last year's Ravens as one of the most injured teams in like 2 decades.
Yeah, and we always say injuries beget injuries. I mean, the Giants held the title for 3-4 years in a row, but this one was an outlier for the Ravens. And the concern is, now what we do is, as good as it is to know looking backwards, and believe me, the Football Outsiders stats are better than ours looking backwards. We don't focus backwards. We focus forwards. And it's just a different bent. And with the panel of NFL doctors, we try and use the insider knowledge to try and do this. And so looking forward now, the Ravens still have some issues. That's big. Another team we'll talk about, the Packers. Everyone's talking about who's Aaron Rodgers going to throw the ball to. We're concerned about who's going to protect him. Bakhtiari's injury is leaking into another season. It basically wiped out last season.
3 separate procedures.
Yeah, and he's got, a recent knee scope and probably cartilage issues. And he looks a hot mess on some video. Elton Jenkins, who's supposed to be the right tackle, is still recovering from his ACL. So which way are you going to shift the protection for Aaron Rodgers there? So we have some worries there. Another big worry just happened. There was already a little bit of a worry.
Not recently, yeah.
But now just even this morning, Mekhi Becton with his right knee. That's the same right knee issue, patella dislocation issue, loose cartilage fragments, arthritis issue he had last year. We believe that's one of the reasons they moved him to the right side so that it could be his outside leg instead of his inside power leg at tackle. And yet today in practice, he still left limping and was pushed around. And so the Becton in the offensive line for the Jets, and the Jets may have a few little issues to start the season. So those are some of the things that we've been concentrating on besides all the big fantasy names.
Gotcha.
All right, Evan, anything else you want to talk about or push? I mean, you're so good. You're such a good friend. I appreciate you and respect you. And if you don't mind, we'll be quoting you all year as you use any six-score information. And
absolutely,
we always follow your stuff.
I started to get really into looking at the six scores in the playoffs last year. I got to incorporate it more into my regular season analysis. It's a great tool. And thanks so much for letting me pick your brain and quiz you on all these key guys, because I can't remember a year where there were so many key guys that got injured in like week 16, 17, 18, and then, it bleeds over into the next season. I mean, so many critical guys. I'm sure injuries happen, but like critical, like big-time fantasy players that got hurt late in the year, and like you got to worry about them all off season, and then are they going to be ready? And, we got to talk to Dr. Chow. Are they going to be effective? And, that's a big part of fantasy analysis in 2022.
Well, Evan, thank you so much. And still, as I always tell you, if you want to escape the cold in Chicago, spend a day in the command center with us this fall.
Dude,
in San Diego.
I'd love to.
Open invite.
I'd love to.
You let me know when
All
you
right.
want to come out. All right. Thank you very
All
much.
right.
The great Evan Silva established the run.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right
Thanks,
back
guys.
after a quick break here. All right. Well, that was fun with Evan Silva. I told you guys, Evan's like, he's on it. Like, he's not a 15-minute and out guy. He's going to talk, and he's got so much information. And
He's
it's
got
fun.
questions, too, for
He
sure.
had his own list of guys. There you go. So check the rankings tomorrow, because Silva's going to be making some adjustments.
It's fun to talk with him. I've talked with him over the years, and
For sure.
and et cetera. But as predicted, Jacob and Justin, I told you Taylor would get his comments in. He wasn't going to sit quiet for the 40 minutes. He was.
There's no Raiders talk, though. What the heck?
Oh, there's not much to talk about, maybe.
You got slapped down a little bit when
No,
you said
I did.
Bears.
I did.
You got slapped down immediately.
I know. Yeah, and you know what it was? It's because he's definitely heard it before.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you stepped in it there.
I
He's
did.
like, no, it's not.
I know.
That's that. Hey,
Sorry,
Justin,
Evan.
Justin, you got to clip that. We got to show that slap down, the beat down on our Twitter handle.
Put on
For the
TikTok.
record,
Put on TikTok. Yes.
TikTok. The beat down. I think we covered football pretty good. Before we go to the Beast of the Week, is there anything else you guys want to chat on, et cetera?
I mean, it's basically just National League injuries. Baseball season's dog days. Middle of August-ish is when Tatis is supposed to come back.
Don't bring up the Padres' ego. They're what? Look, you guys know my son's a fan. I went to the game.
Does he have a Soto shirt yet?
We all went to the game Thursday,
That's right.
the day after the trade.
Yeah.
They're 1-4 since the trade.
Yeah.
It takes a while. You got to learn how to play together.
They scored 9 in the first game, though. They win. Didn't they win the first? I think it's 4 straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all I know is at that game on Thursday, the number 3, 4, and 5 hitters were all brand new.
Yep.
How were the Padres even staying in it before if that was the case? And then the reliever, Josh Hader, is going to be good. Anyways, the Dodgers.
So where's Tatis hitting when he comes back middle August-ish?
Where or what position? DH or
Both, whatever you got info on.
I don't have any inside info. Look, all I know is, once again, I can't say enough. I love the Padres. They're the team. And it's not insider information there at all. But when the GM in March said 3 months to Tatis back, we all said, what? No, 4 to 6. Right after the All-Star break would be, take it, great news. 5's the middle. We're at 5 and a little bit of change right now. And Bob Melvin, the manager, has said, mid-August. So it's going to be 5 months and a week or two. 4 to 6 was always the number. The good news is when he comes back, the worry will not be about his wrist. His wrist will be fine. The worry will be about what? Number one, reacclimation to hitting major league pitching. That's the rehab assignment.
Yep.
Number two, reacclimation to speed of the game if he's trying to play shortstop or outfield or whatever. And for injuries, I'm way more worried still about his shoulder than his wrist. I'll put this wager out to anybody. He will miss games from his shoulder before he misses time from his wrist as he comes back. And someone said, one of these days they're going to have injury props and when players return. Would love that. We would love that.
That'd be incredible.
If people would get into that. But anyways, so that's Tatis. And
the
good news is he'll be fine. Yeah.
Two more real quick. Kershaw with his back issue, he's on 15-day. Dodgers are a million miles ahead in the NL West. Is that a big concern? He's going to be back for playoffs.
Well,
that's fine.
Do you remember all the outrage, and we talked about it on the podcast, when Dave Roberts pulled Clayton Kershaw from that perfect game?
Yep,
right?
I remember.
This is why. He's had a history of low back and SI joint issues. Here it is again. They're trying to win the World Series, not, and so because of that, they'll rest and rehab him. Is this a concern? Look, it's been a recurring concern for Clayton Kershaw over the years. That's why they pulled him from that game. They want to be careful with him. He's their horse to ride, or they've got others too. But yeah, this is what this is all about. It's a long season, injury management.
Well, what I told you at the time, where I was like, it might look at the way differently. I'm like, maybe I leave him in because the opportunity doesn't ever come again. Because like you said, he's always getting hurt. So there's maybe a slight different way of looking at that too, right?
Okay, but are the Dodgers not World Series or bust?
They're always going to be.
What does a perfect game do that? Yeah.
I mean, if you're no offense, but if you're the Cincinnati Reds, you probably leave them in
for sure.
You want a signature game for the season
for
the fans, but you're not. You're the Dodgers. So. Anyways, so that's that. I don't think it's major. I don't think there's leg pain, but it is a management issue, not only for the rest of the season, but the rest of his career. I believe. Look at 5-6 times he's gone on IL because of his low back or SI joint.
Absolutely.
Anyways,
speaking of another ace with lengthy injury histories, he's back throwing 102. Jacob deGrom, it looked incredible in the second start. Still on a pitch limit though, so
look. There are some people that are tweeting me, you hated on Jacob deGrom this season. You said he was 62. Look at him now.
Yep.
Look at him now. He's missed over half the season. And if anything, our 62 before the season started was too high. He's missed over half the season. That doesn't mean he can't be great. If he's great the rest of this season, I'm not sure he even gets to a 62 based on his 62% of his overall production. I hope he stays great. My worry is he throws so hard, and he's had this string of kinetic chain issues and elbow and shoulder and upper back. Have they identified the source yet? I hope so, but I still have my worries about him going forward. Although right now, if we were in his next game 6 score, he's probably 97. He had
really one hitter in 5.2 innings, 12 Ks. Yeah, he
pitch count, there, but he's been dominant, no question.
How do you strike out 12 guys on 75 pitches? That's just efficient. He's not.
He's very good.
Yeah,
well, you only need 36, don't you?
Just don't mess with the other ones.
The math is there.
Not a lot of foul balls either. Obviously, they just miss.
Yeah, talk about maximizing your fantasy value in 75 pitches, though. Come on.
Yeah, that's a good start.
If I'm a Mets fan, do I care if he doesn't figure it out until after the season? I mean, if we ride him through the playoffs and then you get the World Series, then he figures it out afterwards.
No, if he has that success, but
right.
You have to have that, right? Too.
I mean, but
make it worth it.
Look, it's still a ways to go here. Let's not assume that he's going to make it all. I hope he does. And I'm not worried about that because of our silly 6 score of 62. I think we've already proven that was a pretty good number,
right?
In terms of what it is. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he's got no long-term issues. This is another one that leaked from last season to this season in terms of what's going on.
All right, Beast of the Week. We got one from training camp. I'm sure you've seen this a million times being out there on the practice field with guys. Justin Reed hitting a 65-yarder. Chiefs safety.
I'm not really impressed.
Backup kicker
or
just a safety? Or just safety.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Maybe, look, if he were on the Carolina Panthers, they wouldn't have pregame tryouts anymore before that Buffalo game. They'd just say, Justin Reed, you can kick off after the kicker got hurt. I mean, yeah, it's impressive. It's off a tee. It just shows he's a great athlete. I mean, you do realize there's no one trying to block the ball there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of
he had the short walk up. That's fine. Looked like the wind wasn't doing much. He wasn't wind aided.
look, I've seen guys do that before.
I know you have. That's why I wasn't
mean,
impressed, to be honest.
I mean, it just shows what he's a great athlete. Okay,
Right.
he's got good hip flexibility. I mean, I thought you were going to come with Justin Tucker hitting the field goal to get the guys off the field, but Justin Tucker
He was trying to
does
sign
that
his
for a
new. He was
living.
trying to sign his new contract quicker. He just got one today. He was trying to rush him off the field.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I could sort of shrug at that. I mean, I've told you this before. One of the most impressive feats I've seen is Antonio Cromartie. Antonio Cromartie can do that kick. Antonio Cromartie, from his knees at the 50-yard line, throws a ball through the goalpost. I mean, it's crazy. So, anyways, I mean, good, okay, fine. But what do you got, Taylor? You got anything?
I didn't do my homework. I told you I do not have a good one for this week.
No Romanian
No
Soccer
beast.
League beasts of the week
No,
or anything
I mean,
like that?
I got a push on my last bet, so it's not really beast for me.
You know what? It's an easy, obvious one to me because I grew up in L.A. I mean, Vin Scully passed away. Even I forgot. Okay, yes, all the iconic Dodger calls, and I can still hear his voice. And I'm old enough we actually did have transistor radios back in the day, and there are stories of, and this was true. Nowadays you go into a bathroom and you have the game on, and you can hear the game when you go to the bathroom at a ballpark. At Dodger Stadium, you could, because everyone had their transistor radios with them as they went to the bathroom, and there's enough ambient radio sound that you could still follow the game.
Right.
And the Kirk Gibson call and other things. But what this week also showed me is that I'd forgotten how many other sports he called. The catch with Dwight Clark.
I learned that this week, and I had no idea he did that.
He did a lot of other stuff. So
Right.
we'll make the beast Vin Scully, because I think everyone, if you play the sound recognition game of the voice, I think everyone can do it in 2 words, no more than 3 words. His voice is so distinctive in his storytelling. So I'll make and look, Vin Scully right up there with Chick Hearn, Lakers, right?
Well, one I grew up with is Harry Callis. That's when I was a Phillies fan. So he did NFL videos
There's
or
some
films
great
too.
ones, right?
Yeah, so
I mean,
he's one of my
spent some
favorites.
time in
Yeah.
Chicago. One of the pictures I value most one time was a picture with Harry Carey.
Okay, there you go.
But for different reasons. Vin Scully's a storyteller, Chick Hearn, but Vin Scully with his passing. So hats off to Vin Scully there.
For sure.
All right, guys. Thanks to Evan Silva. Thanks to you guys. We'll be back next week. We've got look. I'm going to miss this guest series because when we get to the regular season, we got too much to go over to have guests. So I think we have 3 slots left, and they're good ones. Should I say the name? No, I won't say the name because scheduling snafus. They're scheduled. There are 3 blockbusters. I guess you can't have a bigger blockbuster than, we'll say 4 blockbusters with Evan Silva leading into this here. It's been fun, and we'll catch up with you next week or at Sports Injury Central, SICScore.com. Thanks.